political speech criticizing the people in power, is the most protected category of speech because the founders of the country understood that the people in power will always try to insulate themselves from accountability by limiting that kind of speech. But that is precisely the kind of speech that the former rulers of Twitter suppressed the most and showed the least sensitivity to. So listen, I mean, is Elon going to be the perfect content moderator? No. I mean,
nobody is.
But I do not believe that puts him in the same category as, Vijaya Gotti or Yoel Roth, who showed no sensitivity for political speech.
In this video, another very hot topic and heated debate on the All In podcast, this time discussing the real-time doxing, aka providing up-to-date assassination coordinates of other human beings, and whether or not this should be okay. Just as with the last video featuring the All In podcast, there are some incredibly idiotic takes, and I will be eviscerating left, right, and center as necessary. This is a very important debate, a hot topic right now, and it very much deserves discussion. That being said, I've been covering this entire saga on Patreon, so if you're not a member, you're missing out on a lot of the real-time discussion. You can join with the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment.
A hacker figured out a way to take all this data and track, people's yachts, people's planes. Obviously, one of those people was Elon. Elon had a security issue. This is all public information.
Fact check, false. Now, there's some nuance here, but this is an untrue statement from Jason here. What has happened is a hacker has found a workaround. In short, in non-technical terms, Elon has requested and been granted privacy regarding the data about his private jet and its whereabouts. This innocent little kid has worked his way around this and is still posting real-time coordinates of Elon's private jet, meaning any crazy person who wants can know exactly where he'll be at any point in time and turn up at an airport just waiting for Elon to land. If your brain works, you can understand why this is a security issue and is unacceptable. I've seen some incredibly bad takes on this regarding this young kid, he's just making a mistake. He's a malicious actor who knows full well exactly what he's doing. He's attempting to extort money out of Elon Musk in exchange for no longer providing real-time assassination coordinates of him and potentially his family. Don't believe me?
So what is your current demand? Relative to Musk, what will it make for you to go away and stop this?
Still a Tesla or $50,000. I mean, I'm not going to up it. There's no need to.
That was Jack Sweeney, the innocent kid, aka malicious adult, attempting to extort $50,000 or a free Tesla from Elon Musk in exchange for no longer putting him and his family at risk by real-time doxing, aka providing real-time assassination coordinates. I mean, hello. Can you believe how dumb this guy is for saying this out loud? I mean, if you get your ass sued and you end up in court, you're literally admitting you're trying to extort money from Elon Musk and using the leverage of threatening the safety of his family and himself. The brain damage is real. So please, can we put to bed the discussion about this kid, his innocence, his lack of knowing what he's doing? He's malicious, he's trying to extort money from Elon in exchange for no longer putting him and his family's safety at risk. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a bad human being.
So the larger issue at stake here is the fact that the law allows for people to do this persistent tracking of planes, which then becomes persistent tracking of a person. And what really is at stake here is how we define the term doxing. For people who don't know the term doxing, it means giving a person's location. That could be your home. That could also be you're at a location for some period of time. You're at a hotel, for a basketball game. And it's pretty clear. You can take a picture of a celebrity and say, there's a celebrity here. Oh, Lady Gaga's at the farmer's market. What I object to here, we all understand doxing is dangerous and it, in fact, is against the law to just give people's addresses and stuff like that. The issue here is a new type of doxing, which I'll call, persistent, coordinated doxing, where dozens of times a month you're giving a person's location. It may not be against the First Amendment, Sachs, I think you would agree, but we have to ask ourselves, do we want to live in a world where whether a person's on an electric bicycle or an airplane or any device in between, somebody should be releasing dozens of times a month a specific dedicated feed of their location? It is terrorizing as a parent when this happens. I've had doxing. People on the call here have had various security concerns. We don't want to live in a world with de facto doxing. What these sites were doing was de facto doxing.
I think it was a bad decision. And I think that it represented, on the least generous statement would be that it represents deep hypocrisy, in that not just a few weeks ago did he say he would never delete that account, but he also said he was buying Twitter to enable freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and that he wouldn't come in and do the same sort of content moderation that was done by the old regime. And then he came in and did exactly what the old regime did.
Fact check, test. This is unequivocally false, intellectually dishonest, and just plain shameful and embarrassing. Let's pick apart everything he just said.
Not just a few weeks ago did he say he would never delete that account.
So this is the tweet Friedberg is referring to. Let's read this, but make sure your brain's working first, otherwise you're not going to understand. My commitment to free speech extends even to not banning the account following my plane, even though that is a direct personal safety risk. Let's talk about this. Where in this tweet does it say Elon will never ban this account? At the time this was posted, Elon was saying, I'm not going to ban the account that is currently tracking my jet, even though it is a direct personal safety risk. Elon is willing to take on the personal safety risk, allow this account to continue posting. But something changed. A subsequent event, making it clear to Elon Musk that the real-time doxing of his jet location is no longer a personal safety issue, but one threatening the safety of his family. Elon was saying he's not going to ban this account, even though it poses a personal safety risk to him. Elon has learned new information. This actually poses a safety risk to my family, my young toddler. No longer acceptable. Last night, car-carrying little X in LA was followed by a crazy stalker, thinking it was me, who later blocked the car from moving and climbed onto the hood. Legal action is now being taken against Sweeney and organizations who supported harm to my family. Harm to my family. Personal safety risk. It's so intellectually dishonest to suggest it's hypocritical of Elon Musk to subsequently ban an account for which he previously said he wasn't intending on banning it due to the personal safety risk, because look, whatever, I'm so committed to free speech that even though it's putting my personal safety at risk, I'm not going to ban the account. It is so intellectually dishonest, and that's the best take I can give. To completely ignore the fact that this has now transitioned from a potential threat to Elon's safety to an actual threat to the safety of his children. It's unbelievable. Per David Sachs, real-time doxing is illegal in California under Penal Code 653.2. It's not just constitutionally protected speech. By the way, David Sachs has had another huge thread here. This isn't actually publicly available information as discussed. You can request privacy of this information. Elon's done that. Yet innocent kid Jack Sweeney here has hacked his way around that. It's literally illegal what he's doing. Illegal. And dangerous. This tweet doesn't say, I'm never going to ban this account. This is Elon saying, I could ban the account now and I'm not going to, because even though there's a personal safety risk, I value free speech. Next minute, families threatened, the fucking story changes. Elon made a poll. Unsuspend accounts who dox my exact location in real time, now or in 7 days. The people have spoken. Accounts who dox my location will have their suspension lifted now. I responded to this. You are courageous, principled, and also completely mad. Stay safe, Elon. Don't get deleted from the simulation. There's still work to do. I vehemently disagree with Elon in this decision. Please don't tell these self-hating basement-dwelling adult virgins who are secretly in love with me, who constantly claim, you never disagree with Elon on anything. F***ing fanboy, can't you think for yourself? Happens quite often, but people tend to forget that. This is a terrible decision from Elon Musk. But I respect and admire the courage and how principled he is. Because, public poll, people want these people unsuspended. I think this is insane. I don't think Elon's doing his job as a father. I'll tell you what, as I said in yesterday's video, you try this to one of my children, I delete first and ask questions later. And I don't mean your account. Some interesting discussion on this. The only reason these so-called journalists would want to dox Elon Musk's real-time location is because they want him and his family harassed or harmed. This is nothing new. This is how the left operates. They always lash out with violence when they don't get their way. Here's another interesting one. I'm not famous and I wasn't a public figure either when Taylor Lorenz asked for my address, said it wasn't for publication, and then proceeded to dox me in the New York Times with the address she had assured me wasn't going to publish. The article was shared many times on Twitter. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, the hypocrisy here is real. Taylor Lorenz, just going to say it, pile of human excrement, vapid, hypocrite. There is literally a tweet from her. I mean, look at this. Getting absolutely destroyed by Mark Andreessen here. This is a quote from the same motherfucker, the same journalist who lied to somebody, asked for their address to verify the facts in the story, promised it wouldn't be published, and then published it and doxed the poor girl. This is a quote from the same motherfucker on doxing itself. This is unbelievable. Doxing, stalking, trying to hurt people's loved ones, threatening them, it's not okay in any situation. People on here who want to constantly stoke these politicized outrage campaigns want to dismiss it, but it shouldn't be dismissed. It has very real consequences. The hypocrisy is stunning here. This is the same motherfucker who literally doxed somebody in the New York Times, was literally asked privately. I mean, you guys can go look up the tweets. If you want to see exactly what happened here, you can read all of the correspondence that occurred between these. Literally the DMs here, asking about the address, it's not going to be shared, blah, 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 blah. Hello. That, David Friedberg, is hypocrisy. Final point, of course, I need to discuss relating to the comments from David Fudberg is the idiotic implication that freedom of speech, people's ability to freely share their thoughts, opinions, and ideas, includes the freedom to break Californian law, to dox in real time, to circumvent the request to keep this information private, to ignore Elon's requests and the safety concerns, and then to attempt to extort $50,000 from the guy in order to stop putting his family at risk. That Friedberg implied that Elon is now doing the same thing, e.g. stopping people freely sharing their thoughts and opinions and ideas by temporarily suspending accounts for breaking Twitter's own terms of service, and California law, and putting his family at risk, is just shameful, seriously. And to be very clear, Friedberg didn't say, this is my opinion. He's arguing from both sides. This is one of the interpretations of Elon's actions. I'm just pointing out the absurdity of those interpretations. Make sure people aren't confusing it. Friedberg wasn't saying, I believe this. He's just saying, this is how some people are interpreting the situation. And every single one of those people is either malicious, brain dead, or both.
Now, the more generous thing is what you guys are saying, which I don't think is necessarily wrong, which is that he's trying to protect people where there's some loophole or some law that doesn't seem right morally, but it is the law, and it is what it is. In those cases, I think you run into the exact same issue that the old guard at Twitter had, that the moderators and the executives at YouTube have dealt with, and that the executives at Google have dealt with, and that we sit here and we criticize until you're on that side of the table. And you're forced to make these moderation decisions, you're forced to make these policy decisions, and you're forced to implement these policy decisions because of some moral framework that you now think is appropriate. And guess what? Some people will say that's not freedom of expression. That's not freedom of speech. You're taking that away from some people. You're taking this particular case away from a 15 or 16-year-old kid who's built a Twitter feed.
Just for the record, he may be acting like a kid. His brain may not have finished developing like a kid, but he is a legal adult whose brain seems to be functioning well enough as an adult to understand that he may be able to extort $50,000 or a free Tesla from Elon Musk in exchange for no longer putting the safety of Elon and his family at risk. This isn't a kid. This is a malicious adult who knows exactly what he's doing. As I said yesterday, I think it might have been on Patreon, maybe here on YouTube, can't remember, too much content, not enough time. Maybe the cannabis doesn't help either. Had Elon not already raised the safety concerns with the guy behind this account, had Elon already not said, hey, this is a safety issue, can you please stop? Like he'd already said, no, fuck you, but hey, if you want to pay me enough money or give me a Tesla, I'll stop. Had that not occurred, and then Elon just bans the account with no notification whatsoever, I can understand a different interpretation. But that's not the case. Elon has raised the concerns. He's asked repeatedly, nicely and kindly, and in exchange, the kid's like, nah, fuck you, give me some money and a Tesla, maybe I'll think about it. Let me give you guys an example. Imagine somebody breaks into your home, an armed intruder, and you say, take another step and I'm going to put a hole in your head. No, seriously, if you come any closer, I am going to delete you. They take a forward step, you delete them, GG. That's very different from somebody knocking on your front door and you shooting at them through the door and killing them with no warning. Understand?
And so I think what it shows is just how hard it is to moderate these sites, these platforms, and that there is no simple, easy, idealistic ideologue of, hey, all these things are open, all these things can be used by anyone all the time, because as soon as one of these edge cases start to happen, you want to come in and do something about it.
Chamath, what do you think? What should happen going forward?
So I have had these issues happen to me multiple times. I'm not nearly as important as Elon is, but it feels the same when you're in the middle of it. It feels pretty terrorizing. That being said, I think the real decision for somebody like me is that if it's too much, is frankly just to get rid of it and to find a different mode of transportation that's a little bit more anonymous. And
you're pragmatic about it.
And the reason I say that is that I just think that you would have to go and get the government to basically change the law, which they're not going to do. And so then as a result, your reaction will seem somewhat contrived and deeply personal. And in that, I think you lose credibility. Let me just summarize this and be the first one to just state this. I think that if there's any person in the world that can figure out Twitter, it's probably Elon. But man, has he taken on just a gargantuan battle. And increasingly, I am not a fan of this battle, and I'll tell you why. This is a man who has essentially proven that he can bend the laws of physics on behalf of humanity. He's done it twice, once in electric cars and once in rocketry. The problem is that the realm of decision-making at Twitter has nothing to do with the laws of physics and is governed by emotions and psychology, in which there is no canonically right answer. And so he's quickly finding out that half the population will always find fault with him, no matter what he does.
Well, I understand Chamath's sentiment, and he has made some valid points previous to this. I do just want to fact check him on one thing here. Bro, you really think Elon is just finding out now, just figuring out now that no matter what he does, some people won't like him? This from Chamath is naive at best. I mean, come on, dude. This is a lesson Elon learned a long time ago.
And now the implication of that becomes very important. We saw yesterday that he had to sell another $3.8 billion of Tesla stock. Why is that? It's because this transaction, which was, very tight to get done, probably required lots of margin. I have a margin loan at Credit Suisse, so I know how these things work. And you can very quickly get margin called. You have to sell down things that you own in order to maintain your collateral limits. We've talked about this before. He's had to do this twice now in the last few weeks. And that's because, again, not because of the demand at Tesla, as far as we can tell, but because people believe he's distracted. And so people are anticipating weakness at Tesla. People are now shorting the stock. Anyways, it's causing this downward spiral. And can he fix it? I think so. Can he pull it all out? Sure. Is it just putting himself under an enormous amount of pressure that he could have avoided? Somewhat, yes. And I think that this is sort of where we're at.
6 weeks in.
My gosh.
Totally.
Yeah,
Well, I was saying this guy learned in 6 weeks what it took YouTube 7 years to learn, how hard it is to moderate content. And, I think
this is where I disagree is
Okay,
you're attributing so much good faith to these content moderators at YouTube and Twitter when the Twitter files reveal that they made no effort to suppress their bias. In fact, they were like pretty much doing the equivalent. They were doing the equivalent of dancing in the streets every time they booted off someone they didn't like.
Fair enough. Before you react to what Freeberg just said at the end, that coda, can you respond to what I just said? Isn't it true?
Well, look, I mean, if you define what Elon is, doing there as, acting as a judge, arbitrating on every little content moderation decision, is that a great use of his time relative to what he could be building at Tesla and SpaceX and doing on behalf of humanity? Then no, clearly not. But if you define what he's doing in the larger sense as restoring free speech to the most important town square social network, hopefully thereby inspiring other tech companies to move in the direction of opening things up, then I actually think it's a pretty good use of his time.
David Giant Nutsacks, once again, being logical, reasonable, rational, and spitting nothing but facts. It's not going to be long before you guys and girls accuse me of being a Sachs fanboy too. Oh my god, you agree with David Sachs on anything, man? Can't you just agree with him on something to become more credible?
So look, I think we can quibble about this or that decision that he makes or this or that tweet, but I think the overall thrust of what he's doing is very important for the country and for humanity. So I get where you're coming from. Hopefully, he'll find some people at Twitter who he can empower and trust to make these content moderation decisions so he's not drawn into every single little battle, right? We do want him focused on the highest priority problems.
My point is just that I get that. I just think that what he's learning and what we're living and seeing in real time is that there is no canonically right decision ever in this space. There's only a decision where some percentage will support and some percentage will always be against. That's my point.
Correct.
He did say when he took over, he knew that would be the case. He said, you will know I'm doing the good job when both sides are equally upset.
Thank you, Jason. Not only is this true and relevant, but important. This is why I corrected and fact-checked Chamath there. Elon knows exactly what he's getting himself into. He always did. He literally said ahead of time. He'll know he's doing his job right. When equal portions of people on both sides, so to speak, are equally pissed at him. It's almost like some of these folks, in fact most people in general, live in a framework in which they could never possibly consciously choose an action that they know may cause some people to not approve of them. Maybe this stems from insecurities, I don't know, but it's so strange to hear this. Elon knows exactly what he's in for. He's not surprised at all about the hate stream. He called it ahead of time. I called it ahead of time. And there's tweets from me. This is how obvious it was. I tweeted about this as soon as the Twitter deal was announced, about the relentless attacks amping up from the mainstream media, aka the fake news, academia, Hollywood. I could go on and on and on. I predicted it all ahead of time. It was obvious. You don't need to be a genius. Proof is the fact that I could figure it out ahead of time. Elon is no fool. But again, this goes back, I think, to the framework most people have of desperately needing to be approved of by others. They can't conceive of a reality in which Elon would do anything that would cause disapproval from anyone, because that's the framework in which they exist. Whereas Elon's like, I know exactly what's coming my way. This matters too much not to do it, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Just to put a pin in it, I think it's important for people to understand what the new policy is. So I'm just going to quickly read it just to
Jake, just hang on one sec before you get to, because I think the philosophical point rather than the specific one is an important one. And I just want to respond to what Chamath said and have Sachs respond to this. In the case of the points you make around the Twitter files, and by the way, I don't agree with any of the moderation decisions personally. So I don't think that someone should be suspended for posting public information. I don't think someone should be suspended for saying controversial things. That's my personal opinion, just so I'm clear on that. Because I know that, that's
describe yourself as a strong free speech.
Yes.
Yeah, libertarian strong free. Okay, got it.
Sure. And so in this particular case, I think what really irked me, I was trying to identify why it made me so angry what he did yesterday. Yeah. It triggered me. It really did. And I think the reason was that in the case of the Twitter file points, it was a minority. It was a minority that was affected. It was one person that was affected because the majority wanted to do that thing to that person. And I think in this case, it's that the minority wants to affect the majority in the sense that Elon has aggregated this control and this power over moderation. And he's benefiting himself and a few people that have private planes. And he's shutting down hundreds of Twitter feeds that are using publicly available information. And so it feels even more onerous of a use of power and influence because he's doing something that benefits a small number and affecting a larger number, whereas the other one was affecting a small number that benefited a large number, because that's what a lot of people wanted to see happen. A lot of people wanted to see Trump suspended, and it wasn't right either.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, we understand your position completely. I just want to add to that. In this policy, I think it's very important to understand what he is saying about this. Accounts dedicated to sharing someone else's live location are going to be suspended going forward. You can still share your own location, obviously. Content required, content for public engagements, the president is speaking somewhere, whatever. You just really can't be persistently, consistently tracking an individual otherwise known in, plain speak as stalking.
But Jason, if NPR is live tweeting,
sure,
Jerome Powell's speech,
perfect, no problem,
at XYZ location,
not a problem. If they do Jerome Powell's location for the next year, for the next year, 10 times a week on his off duty, on duty, that's the thing we're talking about.
I'm just saying, let's just say he gives a speech every week. Is that illegal?
No, if you're giving a speech at a public place where you've announced that you're going to be appearing at a certain time and place, you've already made public where you're going to be.
I can't believe David Sachs needs to point out such obvious things on this podcast. Holy shit, dude.
What we're talking about is, and what Elon Jet was showing was a live stream of precision GPS coordinates over a sustained period of time.
Yes.
And not to be too dramatic about it, but if you look at the weapons that are so successfully being used in Ukraine right now, they're all precision GPS guided. Now, right now, you have to be a state actor to get a hold of those weapons, but you could imagine over the next decade that having someone's precise GPS coordinates over a sustained period of time, it would be pretty easy to target them for, and not to be dramatic here, but for assassination. That is a security risk. There's no way around that.
I brought this up with Palmer Luckey, man. I'm scared. That dude could come at me anytime when I get my jet. I don't want Palmer Luckey taking me out.
This about a jet, but
Yo, Palmer, I'm sorry, dude. Do not take me out. I'm going to get my jet. I'll be on my first flight, and he's just going to send a drone in.
But look, let's talk about hypocrisy for a second, okay? Because
here we go.
Let's talk about CNN's hypocrisy and the media's hypocrisy. Because earlier in the week, they were saying that any criticism of Yoel Roth, who is Twitter's former head of trust and safety, amounted to a threat to his safety. And they had this theatrical tweet where they claimed he was having to flee his house, which a lot of people found pretty preposterous. They were basically saying that public criticism of someone who has put themselves out there to engage in a public debate, who's writing op-eds for the New York Times, that is a threat to safety. However, publishing someone's real-time location on a continuous basis so they can be targeted.
It's not intellectually consistent. It's not intellectually consistent.
It's not a threat to safety.
That is
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If one of those two things is a threat to safety, it's the real-time doxing of somebody.
Yes.
I think we now understand why Elon did what he did. He basically had an incident in LA in which the safety of his kid was threatened because he's got stalkers coming after him. So his safety is a real issue. This is not a made-up issue.
But why should his personal experience affect the usage of the service that hundreds of millions of people use? And that's the big issue.
The decision should not be based on what affects him personally. There needs to be a principled basis. There needs to be a principled basis for any decision about content moderation or censorship. Maybe in the first few hours of that decision, it wasn't handled perfectly because there wasn't a principled basis. But since then, one has been put in place.
How about an analogy? Let's just imagine hypothetically we live in a version of the simulation in which children as young as 5 are legally allowed to drive vehicles. Then one day, a 5-year-old child driving a vehicle misses a parking spot at the parking lot of a Wiggles concert and accidentally runs over 420 different children, immediately killing them all. An incident occurs where it becomes clear that the existing policy needs updating. Immediate action is taken. First of all, the 5-year-old child has his or her license revoked. And moments after that, 20 minutes, a few hours, a couple of days later, a new law comes in saying, you know what? No 5-year-old children are allowed to drive cars anymore because we've realized this is an issue. This is what updating your policies and taking action around real-time new information looks like. This is exactly what went down here. Even though it's already against Twitter's policy to dox people, even though it's already illegal to do this in California, there hasn't been that much of a hard stance on doxing in the past, even though it's heinous. I really think the penalties for doxing should be up there with just about anything else. But now it becomes obvious that this is a major issue that must be dealt with. Twitter clarifies their policy and takes immediate action. This is exactly what you want to see. Of course, it's given a lot of fuel to Elon's haters. Oh, this is personal. Elon got butthurt. His feelings are hurt. It's just absolutely absurd. But this is what intelligent decision-making looks like. Are you guys and girls old enough to remember when it was okay to smoke at indoor venues, public venues? Go to a restaurant, to a bar, watch a band play, to be breathing in smoky air, massively increasing your chance of dying of cancer? Then at some point, the penny dropped and people thought, oh, Mark. All this smoking indoors, maybe we should stop this being okay. Next minute, no longer okay to smoke indoors. This is another similar example. When real-world risks become apparent here, it's time to change your policies.
The principal basis is what JCal showed, and this applies to everybody. And so, now it's a debate about whether that policy makes sense. Now, is Elon just as arbitrary and capricious as the former executives who are running trust and safety at Twitter? I don't think so, for two reasons. Number one, he's promised transparency. He said that when we ban or shadow ban an account, there has to be a reason for it, and you have to be alerted to it. In other words, none of the shadow stuff.
No
you
shadow.
need to be informed.
You get your speeding ticket. You get your ticket. It's there, right? No more shadow.
That is different. And then the second thing is that, and again, I think you could say they didn't do this perfectly in the first few hours, but there needs to be a principal basis for a censorship decision, and it needs to be applied to everyone equally. And so far, we haven't seen any basis for believing that he's not applying this principle equally. I mean, it's still very early. Whereas the former rulers at Twitter were indulging their personal bias and personal preferences in who they were banning. There were two standards of justice. If you were someone who was allied with them, it was almost impossible to get censored, no matter how hateful your tweets were. But if you were somebody on the other side of the political debate, they were eager to suppress you.
Sadly, in fact, horrifyingly, this is a perfectly accurate description of what used to go on at Twitter.
And I think that at least so far, Elon has not shown that type of selectivity.
He selected against someone that put him at personal risk.
I think, yes. And
but you understand what I'm saying? If that's where the decision had stayed, then I would agree with you. But I think that since then, they've put in place, they've undergirded that decision with a principal policy.
I think those tweet streams are cool. I think there's some cool tweet streams that some of these people run, and there are hundreds of them, and they're actually kind of cool. You can see where these different planes...
You're in favor of people tracking people's planes.
Yeah, they show like where Air Force One is. They show all these different planes. And whether or not the FAA should be publishing this data is a separate question, but it's on the open internet. It is already there. It's like turning off the RSS feed from the open internet to protect himself.
Okay.
That's why it feels onerous.
So here's the part I agree with, which is I think this policy with regard to planes specifically is going to be futile.
Yeah.
It's going to be at best harm reduction because as long as there's many ways to publish this information,
it's on Reddit,
it's pointless
it's
to
on
suppress it
Facebook.
on Twitter. So listen, I think this whole policy on Twitter is a little bit of a red herring. I think the real underlying issue is that the FAA is publishing these ICAO numbers, thereby making every plane personally identifiable. I haven't heard anyone explain why that's necessary.
I have a counter to it, actually, Sachs, if I may. What we saw, whether you agree with it or not, with the mass banning of certain individuals, did actually silence them and take them out of the public square. One of the reasons, in fact, Elon wanted to buy Twitter. So if you look at certain individuals, whether it's Milo, Alex Jones, Trump himself, right on down the line, when they got banned across all systems, it was dramatic in terms of the reach of that information. So because of the size and scale of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc., when they act in coordination, they can have a dramatic impact. Not a perfect impact, but a dramatic, which is why we have this issue of, hey, should 230 be rethought? Because when they act en masse, it is extraordinary what they can do to an individual. They took Alex Jones. How do you consume Alex Jones? You have to seek that out in a major way. It's distinctly different. Chamath, last word, and then we're moving on.
I think this is a great transition. We're about to talk about nuclear fusion, and my point is, I don't care about any of this stuff. Like I said, this is my point. Is like if you take like an average person, okay, we are, let's say, awake 16 hours a day. And, if you take out the time with our family, David, the family is people that are related to you.
We'll get that. Can we DM Sachs those people one more time?
We'll send you their names. But if you take that out and you take out, exercising and, bathroom
Can we also explain that to
eating.
Sachs? That's when you increase your heart rate and sweat, Sachs.
The point is that you have, let's just call it 12 hours, of functional executive time that you can apply to a problem. And you can break that down into these blocks, right? I would really love what is basically the smartest human and the most productive human of our generation to be filling those blocks with things that sort of like really transcend. And increasingly, and I agree that freedom of speech is important, increasingly those buckets are being filled with things that are very low level and hyper tactical and are distractions at best to the path of free speech. And so I think that hopefully he gets all this shit under control over there. He finds a good executive team. I would like to see him get back to landing rockets on barges, getting to Mars,
Let's do
getting
it.
getting
Yeah,
to the
I
moon.
mean, look,
Finish
you got a point.
self-driving. We're almost there.
Chamath definitely has a point. I'd just say one of the reasons why we don't care that much about this issue is because I think something to understand that's important is there are different kinds of speech, and different kinds of speech deserve different levels of protection. The fact of the matter is, like, business advertising is not as protected as political speech. Porn is not as protected as political speech. Political speech, speech criticizing the people in power, is the most protected category of speech because the founders of the country understood that the people in power will always try to insulate themselves from accountability by limiting that kind of speech. But that is precisely the kind of speech that the former rulers of Twitter suppressed the most and showed the least sensitivity to. So listen, I mean, is Elon going to be the perfect content moderator? No. I mean,
Nobody is.
Nobody is. But I do not believe that puts him in the same category as, you know, Vijaya Gotti or Yoel Roth, who showed no sensitivity for political speech. He has indicated a desire to restore freedom of speech.
Great rant from David Sachs. Perfectly articulated. I have nothing further to add. Nail on the head. It's always super fun to hear the all-in besties sharing their very diverse perspectives. And just a few final closing thoughts. I hope everyone is paying attention to those people and organizations currently exposing their intellectually dishonest, self-serving approach to reality. The Matrix's treatment of Elon Musk, the gaping void between the narrative and reality, is a window into the machine itself. If you thought Elon Musk was the only thing they got wrong, and by wrong I mean polar opposite wrong, the only thing they'd lie to you about, the only thing they'd deceive you about, the only thing they'd mislead you about, you'd have to have rocks in your head. The silver lining in how Elon is being treated and portrayed in the fake news right now is that all of those bad actors with bad intentions, self-interest, with complete disregard for the safety and well-being of other humans, are outing themselves one after the other. News networks, individuals, politicians, Hollywood celebs, everyone in between. The distorted narrative about Elon Musk, as I said in this tweet, is a window into how the machine works. The treatment of Elon Musk is not the exception to the rule, but rather, it is the rule. This is how the machine works. The one true narrative isn't based on reality, it's based on agendas. Let's leave it there. If you think you can handle more, head over to Patreon and join now with the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment. This is a rabbit hole I explore very regularly over on Patreon, so I'll see you over there. Love ya.